That's why
which
today's show is
yeah,
patriotism is a manipulation
it
because
is.
depending on where you sit and how much power you have
Absolutely.
and want to aggrandize power, want to retain power, you throw this construct called patriotism as a manipulative architecture.
Sure.
And that's what we're talking about today.
Yeah.
Is patriotism is a manipulation depending on how it's received and how it's promulgated, how it's put forth and how it's assimilated. And I'm sick and tired of, as a conservative, Republican, which I'm even embarrassed to admit that I'm either one of those, but I'm slowly moving away from all of that and becoming a nihilist.
Just now?
Well, it's been happening.
You've been you've been on that track
What I'm
for
what
a
I'm
while.
getting at is I'm just sick of that version of, wear a flag and always salute, we can do no wrong. We're the greatest country that's ever
Yeah.
been. And it's like, no, we're not. We've made so many mistakes. There's been so much corruption. I still rather live here than most places, of course, but to sit there and just like monolithically say, like even the Olympics, here's something else, okay? During the Olympics every 4 years, or actually it's every other year now, because you have the winter and the whatever the hell. Do you support, you're a Chinese guy or whatever the hell? You're an American citizen, right?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
All right, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I'm
But
not a member of ICE. I'm asking you a damn question. So
yeah.
when you watch the Olympics occasionally, you don't seem like the sport type of guy. But do you support just like it's like blindly and monolithically? Do you just support every American team all the time? Because I don't.
Yeah, I do to some extent. I
Ah,
mean, again, there's a certain thing about rooting for the home team, right? I mean, you live in a city, whether you have a team or not. Right? I grew up in LA. We had a team, and then we didn't have a team, and then now we have two teams again. So it's like this dynamic where if you have a home team, the patriotic on that local level, right, is to root for your home team. I mean, you
I don't
know,
agree with that. I don't agree with that.
here's the question, right? I mean, again, I know that in your situation, your family, growing up, like you said earlier, you've lived this whole dysfunctional type of situation. But like right now, I mean, I know you don't have kids, but you're married, right? So I understand that, things could be different in terms of your opinion and all that with each other. But obviously, you've established a relationship with your wife, right? And you
Right?
established what we would call a kind of like you've set the boundaries because if somebody were to criticize your wife, I mean, how would you feel about that? You would just let them do that?
No, not necessarily. I'd be
Exactly.
open. I'd be open to some form of criticism with my wife. I think she should be open
Towards
to
you?
being
Yeah.
because I can be very recalcitrant and I'm very
Yeah.
aggressive and I'm all that. But at the same time, I'm an amazing guy. I fixed a door. I did some roofing. I read Tolstoy. Why are you laughing? I played a drum. Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm okay.
Well, go on with your question because I don't know what the hell you're talking about.
I was just asking that when you've defined those boundaries for the relationship, right? That means that you've set in place that, hey, I'm going to protect what's mine. Okay? And that's it. That to me is on one level what
Well,
patriotism.
good day, everybody, and welcome to another iteration of Inside Reality. I'm Jeffrey Candelaria with the producer and co-host Jimmy Tran. Thanks for tuning in and listening or viewing, however you're absorbing this content. We do everything we can to take on salient, relevant topics and dissect those topics, very much setting aside, our political biases. I'm a conservative Republican, very reluctant to be associated with the reluctant party, but there's no way in hell I'm going to be part of the Democratic Party as it manifests itself today. So please like, share, comment, dislike, do whatever the hell you want, but try to think about what we're talking about. And today we're going to talk about patriotism to me, the way particularly the Republicans put it forth and the Christian Baptists and the conventional conservatives put it forth. That form of patriotism, to me, is a manipulation because it's indoctrination just like anything else is. For example, the war as it sits today with Iran, it's about 30 days into the unfurling of the war. And I've got a lot of critical perspectives on the way Trump has talked about the war, the way he's framed it. And I don't think it's unpatriotic to be critical of what's going on. Overall, I think demilitarizing Iran is and was a good thing, but Trump's articulation of the way it's unfurled, I'm very critical of because I think he uses hyperbole. Today, for example, as we're putting forth today's version of Inside Reality, there was an American pilot that was shot, or two American pilots were shot down. And Trump just said yesterday or 2 days ago, oh, Iran has no anti-aircraft infrastructure. Well, that's not true. So is it unpatriotic of me to be supportive of the war and Trump to an extent, but still be highly critical of the way he's talked about it? What do you think?
Well, I think there's something that we got to start off with is, I think there's to start with, there's a distinction, I think, between patriotism and nationalism. But that all aside, we'll jump back into that. I think that that's worthwhile to talk about. But to me, I think that, having proper criticism or the ability to criticize our government is really a healthy and important part of it. I mean, if we look at dictator type of regimes, right? I mean, like China and North Korea, I mean, you literally can't say anything negative about the people in charge, whether they're right or wrong, okay? Because if you do, you're off with your head, right? I mean, that's the whole, here's the king. You can't say anything negative to the, towards the king, And so, to me, what we have here is big difference because, and I think that's why the First Amendment, where we have freedom of speech, is so important, right? Because if it's nothing else, I mean,
we really don't have freedom. That's a whole other. We don't really have freedom of speech. Yeah. That's a myth. We do not have freedom of speech in this country. We have more freedoms to speak our minds than relative to other countries.
Yeah.
But to sit there and to say absolutely and definitively that we have freedom of speech, that is not true.
Well, you're.
I mean, if you're a white banker working in an institutionalized bank chain and you say something about a black person that's critical of their competency level, you're still going to be subject to being fired or retribution.
Yeah.
So this bullshit about free speech, it is not true, man. Don't even go there.
Okay, you're dicing a little bit into the nuances, but that aside, I'm just saying that one of the tenets of the freedom of speech, okay, and however level of freedom we're talking about here is the right that we have to be able to criticize our government, right? I mean, the redress of grievance. I mean, that is the very framework by which the Constitution and the form of
That's not true either. That's not true either. But if a Republican senator is critical of Trump on television or on some stupid outlet, that person is absolutely castigated by the Republican caucus and the Republican, machine. So this bullshit about freedom of speech, there's no way.
Fine.
And by the way, let me re-resurrect what I said. A white institutionalized banker working for a bank chain criticizing the incompetency of a black subordinate. I'm not picking on black people. I'm just saying if that white person who has an enormously successful 30-year career making $1 million a year sitting in ivory tower, if that person is critical of people that are darker skinned, whether it be black or Hispanic, whatever, that white person is going to be subject to a great deal of jeopardy, even today. That's what I'm saying. I wasn't picking on black incompetency. I'm just saying certain people in this community or this place called America have been afforded more freedom to speak than others.
Yeah. Well,
that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, no, and I understand that. But remember, we don't have absolute freedom of speech. I mean, because there's certainly things that we're, like the yelling fire in a public, space and stuff like that is not permitted because, again,
yeah, I know. I'm just saying that we generically throw the words around freedom of speech too freely without really assessing what that means. And I'm saying that there are levels of freedom of speech based on what you look like, based on your economic position, based on how much media power you command, based on how much influence you have.
Well, okay, so here's the thing too that you have to parse out.
That's what I'm talking about.
I understand that, but then you have to also parse out that those are more civil and societal responses to those speech. No, but you don't
Still.
you're not thrown in jail. I mean, yeah, you might be jeopard. I mean, your job might be in jeopardy. You might not be able to get a job somewhere in the same field, whatever it is, right? I mean, so those are societal consequences, maybe some economic consequences. But what I'm talking about is that the government can come in and actually arrest you for saying those things.
Whatever.
Remember, the protection of the speech thing has to do with the restraint on government, not necessarily on the social media platform or on, of course, actually there was just a recent ruling now, the Missouri ruling that I was listening to a report on that this morning. They determined that the government was involved in censoring through the platforms like Facebook and whatever. And so as a result, now it was a narrow type of decision. I mean, I forget the specifics of it, but the point is that it was pointed out that the government was involved and they should not have been involved in that. And there was a 10-year dispensation of some kind regarding that. I'll have to find it and post it in the description.
I don't know what you're talking about.
My point is there's a difference between government action and the government being able to do something towards us because of something that we say, versus the public and the
I know
society.
that. I understand that. That's obvious. But when people say freedom of speech, generally the way I've heard people talk about it is the freedom of speech transcends every aspect of the human condition in America. Absolutely. The way it's framed, we have freedom of speech. So it sounds like freedom of speech at work, freedom of speech with your friends, freedom of speech on radio, freedom of speech in terms of criticizing Trump or whatever. No, there are different freedoms of speech, to your point, based on what context you're in. That's the overarching point we're making is there is an illusion in America that freedom of speech transcends every aspect of the way we live, because it does not. And there are not only consequences, but there are absolutely and can be very damaging consequences.
Absolutely.
Depending on what you look like and how much power you have and what you look like. And nobody talks about that.
Yeah, well,
Nobody
when you were growing up, do you get to say anything and everything when you're in the home that you lived in? I mean, maybe not.
Well, I grew up in a lot of dysfunction, so to use my childhood as a metric or a frame of reference.
Well, I can tell you that most homes
would not be.
Yeah, I'm just saying that in most home, and I can probably say that some generality here, with most home, there's a limit to what you can say at home. Okay, you can't use, for instance, all these F-bombs and whatnot.
I don't know that that's true anymore. Look at the south side of Chicago. Look at Philadelphia. Look at parts of LA, east side of LA. Do you think there are two parents in the house that are promulgating and personifying ethics and morals and structure? Come on, man. So that generality is also a myth. I think it happens in a large swath of this place called America, 330 million plus the other 20 million Biden let in. But to say that that's a generic, ubiquitous standard by which children are exposed to structure and what they can and can't do in a family situation, I don't think that exists anymore.
Yeah. Well,
anyway, let's get back to the topic. The topic today is it patriotic? Is it okay to be critical of whether it's government or society or some of these conventions we're talking about and still be patriotic? Is it okay to be critical? No, I don't think it is, because I don't see it on any of the media outlets I see, whether it's CNN, CNBC, whatever that's called, Fox. If you're critical of the theocracy they're putting forth, the narrative they put forth, the human condition philosophy they put forth, if you're critical of that, you are absolutely castigated and you could lose your talking head job.
I mean, again, it goes to the context of where you are, right? I mean, certainly if you're on a conservative news outlet and you're one of the talking heads, I mean, obviously there's a reason why you're on that platform, right? I mean, so to me, I think that there's a lot more there than, I mean, to me, if you look at all the different opinions that are out there, people have every right to say all of that. I mean, yes, there's censorships that are happening because, you might post something or you might say something on a platform and everybody kind of bambasts you for saying so. Okay, but again, I'm just saying that those are all societal responses because we have a society that is going to allow or not allow certain type of speech, okay, or certain types of criticism. So to your point, within the right, within the Republican side even, or whatever, the people that are very pro-Trump, for instance, there are a good number of them that are critical of you if you say anything negative about Trump.
No. I think it's beyond a preponderant population that would be critical of me. I think it's an overwhelming population that has influence and power that supported Trump. I voted for Trump 3 times, but I'm extremely critical of the way he's handled the war. Not so much tactically, because the military, I think, has done an overwhelming job of degrading Iran's military infrastructure. But what they did not do well, and what they're not doing well, is understanding the theocracy part of Iran. Understanding that the religion in Iran is wedded to governance.
Correct.
And Trump has not talked well enough about how do I kill the idea of theocracy in Iran. And concomitantly, he has absolutely exaggerated even some of the military successes. And again, we have dominated Iran militarily, no question. But he uses these outlandish, hyperbolic messages when he says they have no navy. Well, he's annihilated most of the Navy, but there's still some naval presence. And I don't think he did a good job of anticipating what NATO was going to do or not do to open up and liberate the Strait of Hormuz, which affects energy all over the world, not just here in this country. And so what I'm saying is, I don't believe I'm being unpatriotic by being critical of Trump. But there are people in the Republican community and the conservative community and the Christian community that would say, oh, Jeffrey, you're a freaking asshole because you're critical of Trump and you say you're a Republican.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, but
that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, no, that's fine. But that has to do with the community and the society that we're talking about.
It's not just the society; it's the institutionalized
that's right.
power structure.
Sure, but you could, I mean, on the other side, there are people that are on the liberals' left side that there are those that are celebrating it, and then there are those that are just as
celebrating
critical.
What?
Celebrating the fact that there's a great deal of failure on Trump and the administration part of handling the situation. But there's also plenty of criticism, as well as there are some that are praising the move.
But remember, today we're talking about patriotism. To me, is a manipulation. I think it's almost a religion, particularly on the right side, on the conservative, religious, Republican side. If you're, for the flag and all this, I mean, their version of patriotism, the way I've assimilated it, like look at Hannity or Laura Ingraham or any of these dogmatic Republicans. Okay, their version of patriotism is a religion, and I think it's really it can be very damaging. Because what it does is it removes one from being critical or being analytical about policy and governance.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing, too, that I think is important is that we don't necessarily know all that's going on.
Obviously.
So what we do know and what we do see, there's an obvious and then there's not. Because just because we see what we're shown, doesn't mean that's the true situation that's in front of us.
That's self-evident.
Like I said, I understand that, but what I'm saying is that the real true situation that may not be visible to us may be, let's say, worse off or maybe better off. We don't know.
It's probably worse. Look at what happened to our society even the last 100 years. With I was reading an article in the Albuquerque Journal a couple of weeks ago about the controlling the narrative during the post World War II in the 50s, with all those atomic bombs that were exploded, on planet Earth, above ground.
Yeah.
and all the literally millions of people, particularly in the Southwest, that were exposed to radiation.
Absolutely.
Here's another thing. And again, I guess I'm not a patriot. Nagasaki, Hiroshima,
Yeah.
government right away said those people in Japan, oh, there's no radiation after effect. You know, they minimized
Sure.
the radiation effects that literally killed millions of people over several generations and are still affecting people that live in Hiroshima and Are you aware of all this?
Yeah. Yeah.
Look what the CIA did with all those experiments to
The MK
unknowing
Ultra stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
The LSD
So
experiments.
does that mean I'm not patriotic because I'm critical of
So
those things that have happened in our in
I
recent
guess-
history?
I guess for me, that to me is the very definition of patriotism, right? When we see actions that are not proper in our government and we can speak out and criticize those actions or expose it. I mean, like what we do with news, like right now, like the fraud stuff that were happening in Minnesota, for instance, right? And then get exposed, okay? Those to me are the very act of patriotism, not the contrary.
Not according to the Democrats.
Well, that's
Not according to the Democrat media institutions that cover that stuff.
because remember, it's about
They're not only in denial, but they criticize the people that bring forth and are
well, that's-
exposing the fraud.
Yeah, but that's because again, the reason why a lot of people attack people that criticize oftentimes is because I mean, like I mentioned before, is that whole ad hominem type of attack. Okay,
But that's a personal. That's
yeah, but if you don't have a good argument against the person's point, you attack the person.
But according to
They attack it.
CNN and CNBC and all those dumbbells on those stations, that guy Jeffries or Shirley, whatever the guy's
Yeah,
name
yeah,
is,
Nick Shirley.
with his little camera, they position him as unpatriotic.
Yeah, of course. Because again, if it doesn't fit your narrative, you're going to want to, find whatever thing you want to do to tear it apart.
That's why
Which is-
today's show is patriotism is a manipulation, because
It is.
depending on where you sit and how much power you have
Absolutely.
and want to aggrandize power, want to retain power, you throw this construct called patriotism as a manipulative architecture.
Sure.
And that's what we're talking about today.
Yeah.
Is patriotism is a manipulation depending on how it's received and how it's promulgated, how it's put forth and how it's assimilated. And I'm sick and tired of, as a conservative, Republican, which I'm even embarrassed to admit that I'm either one of those, but I'm slowly moving away from all of that and becoming a nihilist.
Just now?
Well, it's been happening.
You've been on that track.
What
for a
I'm
while.
getting at is I'm just sick of that version of, wear a flag and always salute, we can do no wrong. We're the greatest country that's ever been. And it's like, no, we're not. We've made so many mistakes. There's been so much corruption. I still rather live here than most places, of course, but to sit there and just like monolithically say, like even the Olympics, here's something else, okay? During the Olympics every 4 years, or actually it's every other year now, because you have the winter and the whatever the hell. Do you support, you're a Chinese guy or whatever the hell? You're an American citizen, right?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
All right, I'm just saying.
Yeah,
I'm not a member of ICE. I'm asking you a damn question. So when you watch the Olympics occasionally, you don't seem like the sport type of guy, but do you support just like it's like blindly and monolithically, do you just support every American team all the time? Because I don't.
Yeah, I do to some extent. I mean, again, there's a certain thing about rooting for the home team, right? I mean, you live in a city, whether you have a team or not. I grew up in LA. We had a team, and then we didn't have a team, and then now we have two teams again. So it's like this dynamic where if you have a home team, the patriotic on that local level, right, is to root for your home team. I mean,
I don't agree with that. I don't agree with
that. Well, here's the question, right? I mean, again, I know that in your situation, your family, growing up, you had, like you said earlier, you've lived this whole dysfunctional type of situation. But like right now, I mean, I know you don't have kids, but you're married, right? So I understand that, things could be different in terms of your opinion and all that with each other. But obviously, you've established a relationship with your wife, right? And you
Right.
established what we would call a kind of like, you've set the boundaries, because if somebody were to criticize your wife, I mean, how would you feel about that? You would just let them do that?
No, not necessarily. I'd be
Exactly.
open. I'd be open to some form of criticism with my wife. I think she should be open
Towards
to
you?
being,
Yeah.
because I can be very recalcitrant and I'm very
Yeah.
aggressive and I'm all that. But at the same time, I'm an amazing guy. I fixed a door. I did some roofing. I read Tolstoy. Why are you laughing? I played a drum. Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm okay.
Well, go on with your question because I don't know what the hell you're talking about.
I was just asking that when you've defined those boundaries for the relationship, right? That means that you've set in place that, hey, I'm going to protect what's mine, okay? And that's it. That to me is on one level what patriotism.
When you say set boundaries, we talked about this in an earlier show. Again, this is Inside Reality. I'm Jeffrey Candelaria, this is Jimmy Tran. Today we're talking about patriotism, depending on where you're at, how it's being assimilated or how it's being promulgated, is a manipulation. So you're talking about setting boundaries, and I've talked about this earlier show. Before I got married to Nancy 10 years ago, and I was already in my 50s, I negotiated.
Sure.
So no, you're saying sure like everybody does that. People don't do that. I set forth negotiations like, we need 2 bedrooms. I'm highly critical. If you do something I don't like, I'm going to talk about it. If I do something you don't like, you're going to talk about it. We have to be transparent. When there's an elephant in the frickin' room, we call out the elephant.
Okay.
I'm marrying you because I love you, but I'm also marrying you because there's an economic benefit to this as well.
Yeah, sure.
But people don't say that openly.
Well, most
Most
people
people don't.
Yeah, because
Well,
they.
you
because
just
they-
said sure 5 minutes ago. There is no sure.
Okay. Oh, then that's why we have over 50% of all marriages end in divorce.
Because they don't
Because they
negotiate
don't-
it.
Exactly. That's part of it. But there's also other things that are set forth by those boundaries, like religious beliefs, right? Whether they believe that there's such thing, acceptable divorce scenario or not, right? Are there abuse in that relationship? I mean, and the abuse is from physical all the way down to mental and emotional abuse, and so forth and so on. So these are all part of the whole thing. I mean, obviously you don't know when you get into those relationships whether those things are going to be there or not, right? So in your case, you decided that you want to take these actions more proactively, and so you negotiated the terms of your relationship. You defined it. I mean, that's a very common thing that people do. Now, a lot of people, of course, don't do it maybe to the same degree or to the depth of your actions, but they do. This actually also brings up the conversation, even at one level, about this whole birthright, birthright citizenship thing. Because if you think about it, right? When you're born in the United States, you're automatically given a citizenship, whether you choose to or not. So then raises the question, well, then does that mean that the yoke of the citizenship now is something that I have to take on because I didn't choose to or not choose to, right? I mean, if that's the defined
So you're
parameter.
going to ask that question? That's what the Socrates and Plato talked about. Because you're born, you're subject to morals and ethics just because you're born? That's the same kind of question.
Well, that's one level, but that's not the level I'm talking about. I'm just talking about when it comes to the rights and responsibility of.
Let me answer that
of
question.
the-
Let me answer that question.
of the.
I don't
national.
subscribe to the notion that people come here and manipulate and
Sure,
game the
absolutely.
system.
Sure.
And just cross the border, have a kid. My kid's now a citizen.
Yeah, yeah.
And
That game, yeah.
he or she has, health insurance and all that. I don't care for that. I still, even though I'm not the most patriotic guy in the world, obviously, and I own that, I still believe that if you're in this country, a person, by virtue of being a citizen and those privileges that are afforded within the intrinsic notion of citizenship, you with me so far? Yeah. That because you're given those privileges, that you need to make a contribution to society.
Sure.
Whatever that is.
Yeah.
So that's where I almost mandate that everyone here who is capable, because there are some people, of course, they're born and they're ill or they're mentally, whatever the word, retarded, or they're physically.
What if they choose to say, you know what?
then that person shouldn't be afforded any rights.
What do you mean affording any right? The right has nothing to do with the citizenship because
If
remember,
somebody doesn't make a contribution, notwithstanding whatever the hell
they
they
may
are,
not. Okay, let's
why should society owe them benefits at all?
who said that they want anything from society? Okay, so let me.
Because the gaming of the system that is the birthright issue is at its very essence is people that game that and take advantage of it are trying to take advantage of the rest of us that make a contribution.
Yeah, okay. Let's set that group aside. I think that in general we all agree that this whole
I don't think everybody agrees with that.
Okay, because I've heard plenty of even
liberal Democrats don't support that.
Well, the against tourism citizenship where they, like what you just said. I mean, they literally have a surrogate that comes here, is pregnant. And then now the border people can choose to let the person in or not if they're pregnant. I mean, so it's not like they can, they're blindly have to let those people in. So issuing that visa is part of that whole process. But that all aside, those are all the mechanics of constraining that or acting on that. But the point is, I'm not talking about those people per se. Okay, I'm talking about an individual that like let's say you have a child, right? Your child.
No.
I'm just saying. Pretend for a moment, okay? I don't want to burden you with that responsibility. I'm just burdening you with the thought of it at the moment, okay? So let's just imagine for a moment you and Nancy have a child, okay? Through adoption or whatever, okay? And now that child, of course, at birth can't decide whether he or she decides to be a citizen, right? So if according to the way that things are structured, that child is automatically a citizen.
What's your point? What's your point?
Well, the point is that what if the child grows up and decides, I don't want to be a citizen? Do that child have that option?
So I'd say get the hell out of the country. See ya. Bye. No, I'm serious. You're laughing. What do you mean? What? Go.
So the child cannot live here if they don't want. If they choose
you just when they're 18, get the hell out of here.
Well, they can leave the house. I'm not saying that they can't. I'm just my question is if they choose not to have or they choose not to embrace their
so they want to live life
birthright.
So they want to live life as an anarchist or a nihilist?
Not necessarily. They may not want. They don't want all the trappings.
The trappings or the
responsibilities. They just choose. Okay, I don't want to be a citizen.
Half the country doesn't demonstrate the responsibility of leadership of citizenship.
Yeah,
how many people are on social welfare? How many people don't make a contribution economically?
But what I'm saying is that
you're talking about millions and millions and millions and millions of Americans.
Of course, if you're on the dole, if you will, right, then there is certain responsibility that you have. I mean, obviously, those people are probably going to vote the same people that gave them the cash. I mean, that's how the game works, right? You get the vote from these people so that they can give you more money, and then that whole system just gets spun into motion.
Yeah, the rest of us have to finance that fraud.
But what I'm talking about is somebody that have a clear, objective opposition,
to citizenship.
To citizenship.
Get the hell out of here.
Do they have the right to do so?
Yeah, they have the right to do it, but get the hell out of here.
They're not going to say, okay, you need to pay me welfare. You don't need to give me.
So they can be a hobo living on the street? What are you talking about? How is that person going to maintain any level of sustenance? So I don't want to be a citizen, but I don't want to participate in this American, whatever the hell this thing is, which is another myth. But how is that person when they're 13, 14, 15, 17, 18, 19, how are they sustaining themselves? How is my child sustaining themselves?
Well, we go and work for somebody.
Because I already kicked them out of the house.
Okay, so they go and they do some labor and then they get fed. I mean, it's really not that hard. I mean, they
don't
steal the money. They don't steal the food. They just do some work.
But it's not that simple, dude.
Well,
at some point they're going to need shelter. At some point they're going to have an illness. At some point they're going to have a nosebleed.
Yeah, but what does that have to do with citizenship, though?
Someone's got to pay for their dental work. Someone's got to pay for.
They can pay for that.
No, I don't see it.
So you're saying that they cannot do a job or some kind of work to get some cash that they can then use to pay. They have to use the system in order to.
I suppose based on the limitations of your scenario, which is very simplistic and very naive, I suppose they could carve out some form of sustenance and not enjoy. The problem is, at some point in their little, what is that? What's that guy's name? Walden's Pond, that guy, the goofy guy that went to the cabin for a year. Emerson.
Emerson, yeah.
I guess somebody could carve out an Emersonian like. Remember, Emerson only did that for like
Yeah, it was an
months at
experiment.
a couple of months at a time. So
Yeah.
it wasn't like his whole life. So somebody could do that for a while, but at some point, the citizenship, the intrinsic citizenshipness of that person is going to reveal itself somewhere, because either there's going to be a punitive manifestation of it or a positive one. The punitive one might be, is he going to get a license? You have to be a citizen. Well, in some states, I guess. So once again, you can't escape the citizenship part of the life.
But
somewhere along the line to get a license. Does he get a passport sometime because he wants to go to another country? I mean, there's going to be some influence that the citizenship has on his life somewhere that person can't escape.
Okay, but that doesn't. But so, what does it sound like? There is no escape. It's a you have to take this yoke on you, right? Regardless of whether
according to your scenario,
are a conscious objector or not.
According to your scenario, that person can maneuver around it, negotiate around it, but at some point, I think it's gonna be a citizenship influence. We got about 10 minutes.
Okay.
But again, how did that relate to being a patriot and the manipulation of patriotism?
Well, I mean, to me, patriotism has multiple fold, right? I mean, certainly a positive outlook on the group that we are associated with, right? In this case, I mean, you can even argue that there's a certain thing, if let's say you work for a company, like you work for a bank, right? And so there's a certain loyalty that you had to that bank. I mean, there's certainly not blind loyalty. I'm just saying that you have some loyalty to the bank compared to another opposing competitive bank, right? I mean, so the act of standing positive towards that is patriotism of some sort, because there's an allegiance of grounds that you have determined. I mean, we're just talking about here, governmental
but I think
and so forth.
But you've just inserted and introduced a caveat and a nuance to the overall topic. When I introduced the topic of patriotism as a manipulation, I was talking about how when you watch like Hannity or those Laura Ingraham and all that, they're literally never at all critical about the United States Constitution or America or the Olympic team. I mean, there's just never any, I mean, literally never. And I don't even like to use that kind of word, absolute never. And that's disgusting to me because I think it's healthy to be critical of anything, oneself.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy with you, but just kidding. But to be critical of anything is really healthy. But the forms of patriotism that are put forth, particularly by that, Reagan-esque, Republican, conservative Christian America, it's like disgusting to me when I see it.
Yeah.
And when I feel it, it's like, no, I'm not. It's almost like when, the flag is unfurled before a game and people stand up and do the what is that?
Yeah.
The song?
The anthem. Yeah.
Almost a religious experience, which I don't like to participate in that. So does that make me a horrible person? I don't know. What about you?
I mean, I'm kind of in between on that, right? I wouldn't say I'm an extreme on one side or the other.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm not disgusted by it, but I'm not. It's not a religious experience for me to see the flag or to see a picture of Reagan or to see the Olympic team win the gold medal. It's not a religious experience.
Like I said, I find myself, in a lot of different camps because part of my background history and all that. But also, again, I like to see the people or the groups that I'm affiliated with win, right? I mean, example, you go to a university, right? And that's your alma mater. And so you like to see them beat your opponent across town or whatever. The whole patriotism thing to me is within that construct on one level. That's how I look at it.
Getting back to the Olympics, depending on the team, whether it's hockey or whether it's the basketball, there are certain Olympic basketball teams that have been put forth that I didn't like.
Sure.
I didn't like that collective team. No, it's not fine because you don't see people being critical of the United States Olympic team. or the
Well,
no,
you
you
live in a
don't.
different shelter than I do, I guess.
I guess I guess I'm around too many Reagan-esque Republican conservative Christians.
remember when Magic Johnson, remember, because he had that AIDS thing, and then he joined the Dream Team, and remember there was a
Yes.
whole chaotic kind of thing. So there were a great deal of criticism from
but-
all different people.
But people
because of
weren't
that
critical
team
of the
scenario.
people weren't critical of supporting the team. They were critical of should Magic play
Well,
because he
no,
might
but-
bleed on somebody.
Yeah, but they were critical of the American
They were
team,
still
though.
freaking out about
Yeah.
touching Magic Johnson.
Correct.
Remember?
Yes, but they were critical of the American team and the American decision to allow him to play. See, that's what I'm saying, is that it wasn't completely like, oh, we're Americans, so we should support it. Like I said, there's something to be said about rooting for the home team. I mean, if you don't root for your home team, then what's the point, right, of having
What's
a
the
home
point?
team?
What's the point of what?
Of having a home team. I mean, like I said,
I'm a graduate of the University of New Mexico,
Yeah.
and I've always said this out loud. I'm a huge Lobo basketball fan.
Yeah.
But I've never cared for the
the
football
football
team.
team, that's fine.
No, but you just contradicted yourself.
No, I didn't.
You just said, why wouldn't you root for your home team or whatever? Be good to
that-
your school, the Beach Boys song, remember? Be good to your school,
Yeah,
that kind of thing.
I went to university. I competed, in track and field, right? And I have an affinity towards track and field,
I understand
on
that.
some level, but also for my team, the school that I went to, that I competed for, that I represented. There's nothing wrong with that to me.
I never said there was
to say,
anything
yeah.
wrong.
So
What I'm saying is,
even if I
what's
criticize, and I do
wrong-
criticize.
What's
at
wrong,
times.
what I've said is, what's wrong is if I don't support for every U.S. Olympic team every 2 years, there's nothing wrong with not being supportive.
Correct.
Monolithically and almost as a religious experience with every single Olympic team. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with not supporting across the board every single United States Olympic team.
Absolutely.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, but that doesn't make you any less patriotic or more patriotic. And I'm just
According to most people, maybe in
Yeah,
my
I-
circles, it does make one less patriotic.
saying, for some, that is true.
Fine.
And the people that are more religious in that regard will see that, right? I just want to also point out a little bit too about the distinction between patriotism. At least this is how ChatGPT defines patriotism versus, and the key difference versus nationalism, right? So patriotism says, I love my country and wants it to be better. Okay, that's the general patriotism, the framework, and the mindset. Nationalism, my country is better than others and
Of
must
course.
come first. So the distinction. So what
yeah.
you're up against is not so much patriots or people. You're probably up against the nationalists.
Well,
so again, it's a
no. I only got about
of a
5
thought.
minutes, but that's not true. The way that patriotism is put forth by Reagan-esque, Republican, conservative, mostly Christians, is America is exceptional over everyone else, which really is a version of nationalism.
Yeah, it is.
You never heard of American exceptionalism?
I've heard of that. Yeah.
See, I think America in many ways is exceptional.
Yeah.
Economically, we do have more liberties than most, but there has been so much corruption
Sure.
the last 250 years in all walks of,
The last
Yeah.
250 years. That's the whole time.
I know, why are you laughing?
Well, you said that there's so much
Jefferson-
corruption in. No. You said there's so much corruption in the last 250
Well,
years. Well, that
and-
is the whole period then.
Yeah, exactly, precisely.
but that's-
I don't know why you're laughing.
Because-
And it's not just corruption. There's been so much transgression. Jefferson, Washington, they owned slaves. Slavery was part of our country for the first 150 years. Your people, your Chinese, were excluded as a matter of congressional mandate. Look at the way women were treated and still are treated in many ways. So this notion of American exceptionalism is really tricky for me because in many facets of America are exceptional, but there are so many more that are inherently dysfunctional. So
There's no.
I am not a subscriber to nationalistic patriotism.
Yeah. I get that. Now, here's the thing, right? The framers of the Constitution, right, understood this. And how I know that is because in the preamble, right, in order to make a more perfect union, right, they didn't declare that this is the perfect union. Not only that, but it also, in the framework, gives us the ability to amend the Constitution, right? I mean, right out of the gate, before it was even ratified, they required the 10 amendments.
The 10 amendments didn't happen for like 10 years later.
But it doesn't matter. But that's the point, though. The fact that it did happen, that it could happen because it was part of the process. To me, that's what makes it, to me, the exceptionalism is in the fact that we recognize the flaw that we are as humans, and we strive to do better. That's it. To me, that is the exceptionalism part of it. Are we always on top? Absolutely not.
Why is it then that...
So that's the difference.
Why is it then across the entire public school population across the country, something like 30% of graduates from 12th grade can't read or write at a competency level that's supposed to be commensurate to their grade level?
You can call it corruption, you can call it whatever. That is part of it.
All right, man.
Okay? That is the problem.
Inside Reality. I'm Jeffrey Candelaria.
And I'm Jimmy Tran. Thank you for watching. Leave your comments.
And this is...
See you next time for another colorful conversation.